Hello, my name is Alex, I am the Silver Mont, and today we're going to be talking Dragon's Dogma and maybe Dragon's Dogma 2, and I have a special guest today.
Hello, I am David, or DymonX. I've been on some other stuff, Bloodborne and shenanigans, fun times.
Yeah, the Bloodborne DLC I think was the main thing, which also had Doug, but Doug's not here because I think he died or something. I don't know.
Or he went to bed, I don't know.
These are both options. We'll never find out.
Yeah, pretty much the same thing.
If he wakes up, then we'll find out. What if he died and then came back to life?
That's true. We don't know. He could be dead. We have to wait till he wakes up till we know for sure.
We'll find out, maybe. But today we're going to be talking about Dragon's Dogma, because I really like Dragon's Dogma. And you like it too, don't you?
I also really, really like Dragon's Dogma.
So, at time of writing, or well, time of this video, there is no news about Dragon's Dogma 2. They've said like, oh yeah, there might be a Dragon's Dogma 2, but we don't know. But we thought we would just talk about things we'd like to see in Dragon's Dogma 2. Because whilst Dragon's Dogma is a great game, there's a lot of issues with it, and there's a lot of room to improve upon. So we're going to talk about some of that stuff. But mostly just what we'd like to see in the sequel.
I am currently playing it myself while talking, because it has been a while. That way I can get more back into the swing of things here.
I played the PC version came out a couple of months ago. I've put like 100 hours into that, and like more than 100 hours into the Xbox version, so there's been a lot of Dragon's Dogma.
I unfortunately don't have a good PC. I wish I did, because I mean on PS3 it runs fine enough, but you know, you can definitely look at it and be like, well, this is dated.
When I went back to the Xbox 360 version after playing on PC, oh man, the difference was night and day. So if you have the chance to pick up Dragon's Dogma and you haven't played it yet, you should definitely get it on PC. You can use the gamepad, so it's all good. But, so first topic I have here in my list of notes is potential for a sequel. So Dragon's Dogma sold, I believe it sold 1 million copies in Japan alone, that's a lot for Japan. Like, million sales, like in the rest of the world, it's not so big of a deal. It's like, I mean, usually they go like, what, Skyrim sold like 20 million copies, so there's that. But Dragon's Dogma, I think, was the fastest selling Capcom game on PC or something like that?
It was, I don't know if it was the fastest selling, but I know that immediately after it came out, it became like, just went into the top 3 of their, PC games like immediately. So it must have been also the fastest just because it got there immediately, but it's up there with, was it Resident Evil and something else, I forgot.
Dead Rising, I think it was.
Yeah, Dead Rising 3.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, it just came out on PC not that long ago, even. And I think even for the console sales, it was their marketing guy said that they did really well. So it's not even that bad on consoles here in the States.
Yeah, I think it sold pretty well. I don't know if it sold more or less than they expected, but I seem to recall back when it came out in 2012, they were saying like, oh, it surpassed our expectations for Japan, which might be why they've made, well, not really a sequel, but they've made Dragon's Dogma Online, which is currently only available in Japan, and not really sure why, but that's a free-to-play game, which is basically just Dragon's Dogma Online. It has almost identical gameplay, which is pretty neat.
I watched some gameplay actually, because I expected it to be kind of ruined like Elder Scrolls Online was, to ruin the actual formula of what Elder Scrolls was. I watched it and it was like, this is legitimately just Dragon's Dogma, but online. They didn't really change it that much. It even, looked very similar to, Dragon's Dogma itself.
Yeah, I think that's on like PS3, PS4, and PC, but I think PS4 is region free, but you'd probably need like a Japanese account, and It'd probably be easiest on PC because you might be able to get like fan patches to translate some things, but well, although I am a huge Dragon's Dogma fan, I've not really tried to get into the online version because as much as I would like to, I don't speak or read Japanese and I think it would just be too confusing.
Yeah, it's a pretty huge hassle just to get all that translation.
Yeah, but you never know. I imagine there's quite some demand for it to be released, you know, in America and Europe, so that could happen.
I thought there was, but apparently not enough.
No, I hope there will be at some point. But Dragon's Dogma Online could kind of lead us into what might happen in Dragon's Dogma 2. Not really from a story perspective, but from some of the things we might see. Obviously, Dragon's Dogma Online existing at all shows that, yeah, there's definitely a lot of people want online elements in Dragon's Dogma beyond what was in the game. And if you haven't played Dragon's Dogma, the online elements are basically you make the game, you start the game, you make your character, and then you make like a pawn who's, I guess he's like your bodyguard or she, and then every player has their own pawn, and you make your party from your pawn, and then you summon 2 other pawns from other characters. So there's kind of online elements. Oh, and you get like the dragon and stuff, but for the most part,
it's the fact that the pawns, the 2 that you can summon from other, human players, I mean, they are, exactly the same kind of character models as a player character. They can do everything that a player character can and have the same limits. They have the same exact skills and all that as well. The only thing is it's an NPC, so.
Yeah. So it feels like online should be there, and it might have been at an early stage in development, but well, who knows? There was a lot of stuff that seems to be cut from Dragon's Dogma, which is why a sequel would be so great, because they might be able to implement more of that. But, well, one of the main things of Dragon's Dogma, I suppose, are the vocations, or the classes. And there's, let's see if I remember, there's Fighter, Strider, Mage, which is your basic, like, warrior, thief, mage kind of thing. Then there's advanced, versions of them, which is the warrior, sorcerer, ranger, and then you have the hybrid classes: assassin, mystic knight, and magic archer. I think I got that right. And the classes are pretty fun. Pawns can likewise be the same classes, apart from the hybrid classes, which are limited to only the player. But Dragon's Dogma had a pretty fun class system. It was kind of like, classes were bound to weapons, rather. Something like that. Like, only the warrior could use long swords, which were basically great swords. But then, like, a few classes could use the bow. Like, the strider could use a bow, ranger had the long bow, which was different. And then the assassin could also use a short bow.
That was what made the assassin so interesting, is they could use the biggest variety of weapons, between the sword, the daggers, the short bow, and a shield.
Yeah, the assassin was kind of like a weapon master class almost, because he could use such a wide variety.
Yeah.
Then there's...
That's why it's my favorite.
Yeah, I played assassin on the PC version, I quite enjoyed it. I didn't think, when I first got the game, assassin would be my kind of thing, because I don't usually like rogues and thieves and stuff, but assassin's a lot of fun in Dragon's Dogma. You get those like full moon slice thing. You've got the parries, and or you can go with daggers. Daggers are good too, where you can use that like buff that makes you super fast. That's always fun.
Yeah, I am currently playing an assassin. My favorite thing about it is the different movement options. Like, I think a mage and a sorcerer can they glide in midair or something like that?
Yeah,
think.
like
Right.
If you're using a staff, you can like levitate and like glide around, and then if you're using daggers, you can double jump.
And you can roll.
Oh yeah, and you can roll.
Yeah. So that's why I like playing the assassin and the ranger and striders, just to have those movement options, because there is climbing as well. I mean, it's not like, Assassin's Creed or Uncharted style like parkour, but if there is a ledge, you can grab onto it, and you can just run across the rooftops of Grand Soren by just jumping up on them.
And that also plays into the combat, because like you play Dark Souls and you fight like a dragon, and you're basically just going to be whacking it in the feet. In Dragon's Dogma, you climb on the dragon, you climb up to its head, or to it. Well, usually you climb up to its heart, because that's where its weak point is, but you can climb the enemies, like Shadow of the Colossus. Is it Shadows or Shadow of the Colossus? I always forget. But that thing.
I think it's Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
I could be wrong.
But that game. And the climbing's a lot of fun, because it adds a lot of kind of strategy to the game. Maybe not a lot, but enemies have weak points after all. Like a Cyclops might have its eye is the weak point, so you could shoot it from the ground. You could climb up to its head and stab it in the eye. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do. So when thinking about, well, what classes do we add into this game, you have to think, how do they mesh with this, range combat, close combat, climbing combat and stuff. So on that note, what sort of classes should they add into Dragon's Dogma 2?
I can never think of that, because they've covered so much. They have, your 3 basic stuff and then advanced versions, and then the hybrid stuff is very new to me, because I guess, I don't play that many RPGs as much as I love them. Dark Souls doesn't really have a class system, so when I get into something like this, it's like, whoa, hybrid classes? That's a pretty neat idea. Apparently there's a lot of other games that do it, but, it makes it kind of hard for me to think of more stuff. So what stuff did you have in mind?
Well, the way I thought of it is, as the classes are mostly kind of weapon-based, which is also, I think, how Final Fantasy XIV does it, and maybe some other Final Fantasy games, and probably other games too, but so it's like, oh, we have daggers, we have long swords, we have bows, long bows, staves and arch staves, I probably already said daggers, and like long swords. You also kind of get hammers, but they're basically just reskinned long swords. So
yeah, slower.
Yeah. The first thing that came to me was, of course, spears, because, I really like spears. And then when I think,
oh, that's true.
How would like a spear class work in it? And my kind of thinking is that you'd have like something like a Dragoon from Final Fantasy, kind of an aerial melee-based class, which sounds very strange, like when you say aerial melee-based, but I guess the basic concept would be it would specialize in fighting like flying creatures like dragons. Like usually you would, use like a ranged class for that, like bows, but that's just because you normally can't reach them. So the idea is that this class would have the mobility options to reach flying dragons and harpies and stuff. So like, I guess like having a really high jump ability, or maybe you can like lock on to something flying and then you zoom over to it kind of thing. Stuff like that I think that would add like some new options into the game and be pretty fun. What do you think?
Maybe like being able to, maybe like run up a tree and then kind of jump off it kind of thing. If they want to make it seem more realistic than just flying up at it. That kind of stuff. Because there's a lot of architectures, a lot of trees out when you're fighting. I mean, there's some flatlands, but you'll find most of the enemies like, in forests surrounded by trees and, walls of destroyed encampments and stuff like that. So it's a very possible thing.
There are a lot of ruins.
Yeah.
Another option, instead of just having them like, because in Final Fantasy, the Dragoons literally just jump like 100 feet in the air, which might be a bit too sort of, like a bit too anime for this. I mean, Dragon's Dogma has a lot of really over-the-top stuff, but for the most part your character feels quite grounded, like in reality. Like you don't literally just fly around even if you're using like magic and stuff. So like another option could be like it's technology based. Like, to use a very topical example, Winston's jump pack in Overwatch. He has like some sort of jetpack or something, I guess, that he can like fly off with. It could be something like that, like, I don't know, rocket boots or something. I guess that could work.
So you're thinking of adding like the kind of gunpowder, revolution and that kind of stuff with, guns or like boomsticks kind of stuff to create like, being able to rocket up in the air.
Right.
I mean, I don't see why not.
That was actually gonna work with like the next class I was thinking, which would be something like a gun class. Like they don't have to go necessarily way further in the future, just like, like the jump from Fable to Fable 2. It wasn't like thousands of years or anything, but it was just far enough that they now have guns. So, a gun class could be fun, but how would a gun class like differentiate itself from, like the ranger or the sorcerer classes?
And then would they have anything as well for up close combat, or is a gun good enough as well for that? Like a boomstick obviously would be pretty good up close.
It could be like a transforming gun, I guess. Like, it could have like a shotgun for close range and then transform into a rifle for long range or something, I suppose.
That would be pretty interesting.
Mm.
I guess to balance it, probably just give that class like, less mobility. It's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, it could be.
Because otherwise, it sounds like that class could be pretty powerful.
That actually reminds me of another Overwatch thing. You know how Bastion can transform into like a stationary turret?
You gonna pull out a minigun?
Maybe like the shotgun... yeah, maybe like the shotgun is like your mobility option. Like you can run around with the shotgun, or you can like, not like transform into a turret, but like become stationary because the gun becomes bigger and like more long range sort of thing,
I guess so.
So you have to like anchor yourself to the floor whilst using it or something like that.
Yeah, I can see that.
Then in Dragon's Dogma Online, you do have like the Seeker class, who has the Seeker's basically like the Strider, but they have like a grappling hook. So that kind of ties into the Dragoon thing I was saying. Like you can use the grappling hook to like quickly get over to enemies and jump around them and stuff. But
grappling hooks are always a good idea.
Yeah, personally I wouldn't like to see that as an entirely new thing, but rather just add that to the Strider's arsenal. Because the Strider already has very similar things to that, like, I don't remember what it's called, but the Strider has like a skill where you basically trip up enemies with a wire or something, I'm pretty sure.
I think so, yeah.
So they already have like the wire, they just need an option to use it as a grappling hook like the Seeker does. And then the other class that's in Dragon's Dogma Online, which is one I would like to see in Dragon's Dogma 2, is the Alchemist. So when I'm thinking about what weapons do they not have, obviously they don't have an unarmed class like a monk, a punching person.
Oh yeah.
And that's what the Alchemist is. He's basically... he punches stuff and he uses the power of gold. Like there's some video clips of it. It's pretty cool. He's like jumping around like crazy and flying through the air. That's probably the most kind of anime class there is at the moment in Dragon's Dogma, is the Alchemist. The muscle wizard who hits people with the power of gold, I guess.
Yeah.
It could work.
That's in Dragon's Dogma Online?
Yeah. And that's actually seems to be like the only entirely new class in Online. Most of the others are just reworked versions. Like I think it's like Shield Mage. That's like the only tank class, and it's basically a mix of the Mystic Knight and Sorcerer. Like you have a giant shield, but then you also have like a staff. It's kind of weird. Then like you have variations of the other classes. For some reason, Fighter isn't a tank, even though they have a shield. Which is really interesting, because how often do you get sword and shield classes that are also DPS classes? Not often.
Yeah.
So that's like kind of all the ideas I can think of for new classes when going by different weapons. But I mean, there are loads of other weapons you could probably work into classes, like a flail or a Morning Star kind of thing. But
I think the Magic Archer uses weapons like that, though.
the magic archer, they use...
No, I'm sorry, Mystic Knight.
Oh.
I had a moment.
Yeah, the Mystic Knight.
The Mystic Knight,
Well, they can get, like, maces and stuff, but they don't get, like, flails. Like, the idea of that would be, obviously, it's like a stick, and then a chain, and then, like, a painful thing on the end of the chain. So, it could... I guess you could kind of work that into, like, a whip sword class.
Whip sword?
Like, whip weapons in general. Not just, like, a whip sword, but, like, kind of chain weapons, you know? In general.
Yeah.
I guess another thing would be, like, a staff user. Like, not like the magic staves, but, like, you know, a long stick that you bash people with. You know, like those, like,
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
I don't remember what it's called, but it's some sort of Chinese fighting style where they're always spinning around with sticks and stuff. I guess that could work.
Yeah, Goku.
Yeah.
Goku had it as a kid.
He had, like, an extendo stick.
Except his extended. Yeah.
An extendo stick. I could go for that in Dragon's Dogma 2.
I mean, some of the stuff they already do is pretty, like, crazy anime, so...
Okay, and after some, recording issues with, like, chat stuff cutting out, let us continue with the next topic, so we've done classes and weapons, which would be, I guess, general changes to the game, like gameplay, online, stuff like that. New gameplay features we'd like to see.
You say we're moving on to the gameplay stuff?
Yeah, like,
Okay.
online things, gameplay changes, stuff like that.
I've always been, like, so bewildered that the game doesn't have online. Like, I think, I agree with what you said earlier. I think they, like, it might have been something they meant to have at first. And then probably, like, they just couldn't, you know, get it really working in time for release. They didn't just see it, they saw it as, you know, an impossibility, and so just kind of went for the pawn system instead. Because, I mean, like I said before, pawns do everything that you do and have the same limits as you do and all that. It's just, you know, literally an NPC. There's nothing different about them, except for they say annoying things, which I'm sure with online you could have a friend do the same thing, except, you know, different, instead of just yelling about wolves traveling in packs or whatever.
Take care, you aren't soaked in water.
Yeah.
Water.
Shit like that.
Because, you know...
Goblins fearing fire.
Yeah. It hates fire. Fire works well. I kind of liked the pawn chat. I think it's funny because they're like, you know, they're so enthusiastic and earnest. They're kind of like human versions of, like, I don't know, dogs or something.
Yeah, I never found it as annoying as some people do. I kind of just find it funny myself.
Oh yeah, some people, like, hate it so much. I never really found it that annoying. Just repetitive, yeah, but not really annoying. Like, I always like when they find something and they just, like, go sprinting off towards it. Like, oh, what is this? And then they come back like, look what I've got. Or the best thing, when your pawn returns from another player's world and they say something like, I hope I was able to please you, master. Like, they seem so happy that they've done something, and it's like, good job, pawn, you did something that's not really worth celebrating, but I mean, if it makes you happy, then good on you.
Right. There's something very weird happening right now as I'm playing. I'm doing that quest where you tail that guy at night in Grand Soren, the guy who is a Mystic Knight, to give the gold to that woman. And at the point where he got to the woman's door, like, you know, it did a cutscene to show him, like, turning around and then knocking on the door. For some reason, two townspeople were fighting each other. Like, just beating the shit out of each other. Like, I've never seen that before. It was just, like, right in front of the guy. They were just, like, punching the shit out of each other. That was pretty weird. So, and interesting.
That's open world games for you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that just shows the AI, because the pawns, while they're not people, they have pretty smart AI.
Yeah, the pawns are, like, separate from the NPCs in that aspect, which is kind of fun. But, I guess that is the main thing everyone would want from Dragon's Dogma 2. Online, co-op.
Right.
So how do you see that working in Dragon's Dogma 2?
I think so. What you told me before, like we were talking about whether it would be like, drop in, drop out, or, how you would get something like that to work, is you're talking about like, meeting up in like a, hub area, which they already have for the pawns, is the, what is that where you get them? The rift, right? So you could just turn that into kind of a hub to, I guess summon your friend there, and then you go into, your own world or something like that. So not necessarily like Dark Souls, because I guess you'd kind of want it to be, one game. See, but then I don't know about that either. See, I don't know. I guess I've been thinking too much of I think too much about Dark Souls and how it's different because you do stuff in different people's worlds and you have to do the same thing in another world, because that's the only RPG I've played that isn't an MMO that has, co-op. So I guess it's harder to see it done another way.
So
that, when you meet up to do co-op, that everything, like the same thing happens in your game when you're playing by yourself.
You mean like how in Dark Souls, if you summon me to fight the Dancer, and then we kill them, we go back to my world, then I have to fight Dancer anyway.
Yeah.
It's not like we kill Dancer once and then she's gone in both our games.
Yeah.
I see what you mean.
In Dark Souls, you have to separate. You just kind of meet up for a little bit, and then you go your separate ways back to your own world. Because, there's no, like, just, group up co-op, and then the game is just now in co-op. You can go through everything with each other, teleporting back to Firelink and back to the area and doing all that with each other. Something like that.
Yeah. So I guess the options would be for Dragon's Dogma 2. Do we have it so your like campaign progress is, tied to that? Or do we have it so it's like Dark Souls, where if you join someone's world, you might keep what you get there, like, I don't know, items or whatever, but when you go back to your own world, that progress is gone. I wonder which would be better in this case.
Well, this game doesn't have, like, bonfires, and it doesn't have like a hub that you need to go back to warp back to, so I'm sure there's a way they could do it. I just fell off a building. I'm sure there's a way they could do it where you could just be, in co-op together and just roam around the world together.
Yeah, I think, like Dark Souls, your progress doesn't necessarily need to save in your own world, but at the same time, it could allow you to play through the entire game in co-op if you wanted. Like, if I joined your world, I could go and buy items, I could level up my character, change my class, all that sort of stuff, but then we could do the whole game together, but then when I go back to my world would still be in the state that it is when I started out. I think there's like no reason that wouldn't be problematic, I suppose.
Well, if they keep the system where, I don't know, if they keep the system where as you progress, shops get more items and stuff like that, it'll kind of, when you go back to your own world after doing a shit ton of stuff in my world, you'll just be like overpowered in your world. And I mean, I guess there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but developers seem to want to stay away from doing that kind of stuff. So it depends on if they keep that same system of the shopkeeps.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of different ways they could do it. One thing they could do, which they so one of the really old kind of concepts for Dragon's Dogma would be that you have all these like different copies of the world all layered atop each other, each one belonging to a different player. And then the one thing that they share is a tower that goes through every single world. Like, so the tower would be the same for all the worlds, but otherwise the worlds would be different. Kind of like how the Rift works. And I'm thinking, they could keep the Rift how it is now, like for pawns and stuff, and they could make this like tower kind of thing for players, like a hub that you go to where you can find other players, kind of like the tower in Destiny, I suppose.
Yeah, that makes sense.
A sort of
I like that.
Yeah, like a sort of hub that you can go to, and obviously you could meet random people in there, or you could say I go to it and it would if I just go to the place, it would put me in one where my friends are or something. Or you could just like invite your friends to that place, and then once you're there, you can join up, like party up, and then go back to your own version of the world. And the other thing of that tower was like it was a dungeon too. So like the top level could be like the hub, or the bottom level, and then you progress from there into like a series of dungeons. They get harder and harder, kind of thing. Kind of like a challenge mode, I suppose.
I'm like going through all this in my head as you're saying it. It's a very interesting concept. Almost might be too much.
Yeah, they had like so many plans for Dragon's Dogma, and they had to like cut a lot of it out.
It seems like they did, yeah.
But I definitely think co-op is something to work towards in the sequel. How many players though should it have? Should it be like 2 players and then the rest of the party is made up of pawns, or should it be like the whole party is made up of players, like 4-player parties?
That'd be pretty cool. I mean, they'd probably have to make the world a little bit bigger. I mean, the world is already actually pretty big, and I'm sure with, new technology they can make it even bigger. But then maybe like dungeons would have to be a little bit larger.
Yeah, that actually does lead into the next point, the game world, because Dragon's Dogma, the world itself is kind of it's bland at times. It's mostly just fields and things like that. You do get like dungeons, and there's a few cool areas like the giant wall in like the north where you go near the end of the game. There's that, and there's some other cool things like mines and goblin trails, and that Blue Moon Tower place, that's pretty cool. But a lot of the game world is just like fields and forests and stuff, so would you like to see more kind of variety in a sequel?
I mean, I'm sure they could, something cool like, more mountains. Because, I mean, you see a ton of mountains in the distance. I'm just outside of Grand Soren right now. There's tons of hills, mountains, and stuff. And they don't seem that far away. I mean, you climb a small hill when you're going to, that wall, the wall encampment. But otherwise, you can't really go much anywhere. And you can do all that in, like, a game like Skyrim, which...
Yeah.
Skyrim's pretty empty. It just kind of pride itself on being so huge. So I'm sure with new technology and stuff, they could make a world as big and interesting, like geographically rather, and be able to do all that at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know if they had a world like that in Elder Scrolls Online as interesting as Skyrim was geographically, because I didn't play it much. I think I just did a bunch of emotes near other people and then didn't play it again. Just it wasn't really that interesting to me.
Yeah, I never played much of that. I didn't find it appealing. But, I suppose the main things are like Dark Souls has like a really small world, but it feels quite big because it's so densely packed and detailed. Whereas Skyrim and perhaps the best example is Just Cause, like Just Cause 2 and 3. The worlds are massive, but they're not really that interesting to explore. So like, do we want like a massive world in Dragon's Dogma 2, or would we rather have like a relatively small one, but it's like, it's full of stuff to explore and things like that?
I'm sure they can find a good medium, because I do enjoy exploring Dragon's Dogma's map as it is right now, just because, like you said, there is some interesting stuff, like finding, like the waterfall and the mines and all that, and like I said, Blue Moon Towers, great too. Finding all these little trails and all the little different enemies that are in the different areas. Wolves hunt in packs. Pawn just yelled at me. But also, fill it with interesting stuff such as more dungeons, caves, more kind of places like the Blue Moon Tower. Like, there's no reason why they can't, make a place like that, because it goes into a loading screen. So there's no reason why we can't have more, like I said, dungeons, caves, places to explore like that.
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
I'm pretty sure they could find a way to make, a healthy medium between, vastness and interesting and dense and all that.
One sort of alternative, maybe not the best, but one that I just thought up is in the expansion, the Dark Arisen stuff, the whole area, like, they didn't add anything to the open world. They basically added one giant dungeon, and I was thinking, what if Dragon's Dogma 2 was just one really, really big dungeon?
I wouldn't have a problem with that, because I actually didn't play through a lot of Dark Arisen, but I've gone as far as finding the room with the giant Cyclops, and then like fucking, I don't know what it was. It's like this, dark dragon showed up as well, and they were apparently fighting as each other too. Like, all this crazy shit was happening, and it was really fun. Like, because it was, like you said, a giant dungeon. There wasn't a lot of outside places or fields or trees or what you would expect from an open world, but it was still fun and interesting and big enough to do a lot of climbing. It had verticality as well as being exploring, being able to explore.
Yeah.
By just going through linear.
They definitely took some kind of cues from Dark Souls, I think, in the Dark Arisen DLC, because rather than going to the open world aspect, they just went for one massive dungeon. And in a way, you could describe Dark Souls as one massive dungeon, or rather, a series of interconnected dungeons, because Dark Souls, like, some people call it open world, but it's not really open world. It's basically just, it's like if you took a Zelda game and cut out Hyrule Field and just stuck all the dungeons together and made them link into each other, which I think that could work, but I'd rather just keep it open world, but with a more interesting open world. And one way to make an open world interesting is, I think the new Zelda game, Breath of the Wild, is a good kind of example of this. Whilst that is, from what we've seen, just like, lots of forests and plains and trees and stuff, the fun part comes from the way you can interact with the world, the way you can move around the world and interact with it. So that's something they could do for the sequel. Whilst Dragon's Dogma has, like, some climbing options, it might be fun in the sequel if they expanded on that. Make it so you can, like, climb, like, walls and mountains, basically. Like in Breath of the Wild, where you can just hop up like a wall. They already have a stamina system in Dragon's Dogma. They already use that for climbing. If we can climb up a dragon, why can't we climb up like a brick wall?
Right.
Or like a mountain?
That would be very interesting to put in. And talking before about the whole Dark Souls thing, people talk about how they prefer Dark Souls 1 because it felt more open world, which I don't agree with. Like, I think the game was, fairly... I mean, it wasn't very linear, but it was in some ways linear. It just gave you more options. So it wasn't really that open world. It just had a lot more options in what you could do when. So I'm sure Dragon's Dogma could take, cues from there as well. Just giving you different options, in the world that they've created, instead of having a vast open world where, I mean, sure, you have your options with quests, but,
Yeah, I don't think they need to focus, like, on size. That's like overrated. We don't need massive open world. We just need an interesting world to explore. That's why Dark Souls 1 is, like, tiny. Like, the map size is really small, but it's really densely packed, and it feels like a really big adventure. You go from one side of Skyrim to the other. You start off in, like, a snowy field. You probably end up in a snowy field. You go from one end of Dark Souls to the other. You start in, like, some sort of Greek city of the gods on top of, like, the mountains, and you end up in some sort of crazy...
Yeah.
I don't even know how to describe Ash Lake. It's like the center of the world sort of place. It's crazy,
It's very interesting.
And that's...
I guess the linearity of Dark Souls, of just moving... Because, like you said, there's a lot of interesting places, and when you're new to the game... Like, it's not huge, but you're still able to explore, and there's so much to explore, and you just keep going and finding new shit, and you're like, holy crap, where am I now? What is all this? This is crazy. It was very interesting to explore the new areas.
Yeah, the game isn't massive, but it feels big, and it's almost overwhelming in that, like, you do kind of enjoy getting lost whilst you're going, oh, what's down here, what's up there, and when you're rewarded for exploring by Ash Lake, for example, being a perfect example actually, because nothing in the game suggests or hints that you should go to Ash Lake. It's just something you would find, unless you know about it, purely by chance. You just like happen to whack a few walls and you're like, oh hey, I'm inside a big tree, this looks stupid, I'll keep going down. And then you emerge into Ash Lake and it's like, wow.
I wonder who put those ladders in that tree. It was a pretty good idea.
Well, it must have been, what's his name from Dark Souls 2, Laddersmith Gilligan.
Well, yeah, he just found the giant, like, you know, ancient tree of, you know, the world before it was the world. And then it was like, you know what this place needs? Some ladders.
What if he started an Ash Lake? What if Gilligan is the everlasting dragon and he transformed into a human?
Instead of the humans who wanted to transform into dragons by making a covenant with him.
Yeah, he wanted to transform into a human because he was like, I'm tired of sitting in this shitey lake.
And he found...
I want to go make some ladders.
He found his best way to connect with humans was to make ladders.
Right? Because ladders connect to
It's an honest
points.
profession.
He thought he could connect with other humans, so he became a laddersmith.
It's an honest human profession.
Yeah, it's the law. It's confirmed, Miyazaki.
We figured it out.
Yeah.
We did it.
So,
we're ultimate.
Back to Dragon's Dogma. What about the story? Because a lot of people complain that Dragon's Dogma doesn't really have a story until the end of the game. But, I mean, the story's there, it's just they don't whack you over the head with it. They say, look, this dragon gave you conniptions, now you need to go and get your heart back. And then after you do that, I mean, the end of the game goes completely batshit, you know? But,
See, at first, I really did fall in love with the story, the little nuances of it, you know, a dragon shows up, steals your heart, and you're like, that's not cool, I want it back, instead of dying or something. And so then you know, have to find the dragon. And at some point you do, and he's like, hey, what's up? You suck, so you can't fight me now, you should probably get stronger. And you're like, well, that's the plan, you big fuck. So you do, you get stronger, you keep doing more stuff. You start uncovering secrets while you're doing it about, you know, about the dragon, about the world, about the king, or the duke rather, who is a crazy rapist or whatever that whole scene fucking was. And then it turns into, you find the dragon, oh, there's a cycle. The music is wonderful while you're doing that whole thing. The dragon fight itself is probably one of the best boss fights in a game that I've played in a while. And then it's like, whoa, it's a cycle. Holy crap, what is the cycle? Which kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to say it felt like a cop-out, the whole cycle thing, because there's a lot of, you know, Japanese stories that use the idea of a cycle. Because I found this one more interesting, because the cycle itself is the dragon's dogma. You know, a dragon shows up, it's like, here's a dude, better take his heart, and then that dude is destined to, you know, basically become God, because God killed himself, and then God killing himself makes a dragon fall to the world, and the dragon has to find a new God. It's like, whoa, Jesus Christ.
No, it's not that.
It's not that?
The dragon is the people who fought the Seneschal, but weren't able to defeat the Seneschal, so he turns them into the dragon to find the next one.
Yeah, because you're the one who's supposed to break the cycle by killing yourself, right? And you give your pawn life, and that's supposed to be a whole new thing. Or not life, but
I'm not entirely sure
sentience.
how that stuff all kind of works, because they kind of imply that even if you do break the cycle, it does continue.
Yeah, because you go to New Game Plus, so everything just it's a cycle no matter what. But that's because you just want to keep playing the game, right? You can't. So lore or story wise, you're the first one to end it, which is like super cool. But gameplay wise, you got to go through again, you know?
Yeah.
You can't just stop.
Yeah, there are some not connections, there are some similarities with Dark Souls there. I mean, the plot of Dark Souls 1 is Gwyn linked the fire, he used himself as fuel to keep the Age of Fire going, and now people want a replacement for that to, you know, keep it all going. In Dragon's Dogma, the Seneschal is he is basically the fire of the world itself. He is the one that keeps the world turning. But no fire lasts forever, so he's trying to find a replacement, and that is supposed to be you. And if you defeat the dragon, you have proved yourself worthy to face him. And if you don't defeat him, then he turns you into the next dragon. And if you do defeat him, then you become the seneschal. And your only option there is to, like, just basically sit there and look at the world for all eternity.
Just keep
unless
it going.
you stab yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So... Oh, and of course, it's really nice that the first seneschal you fight is the guy from the prologue.
From the very beginning, yeah. I liked that, and his pawn.
I forget his name.
Did he have?
Yeah. Savin?
Yeah.
I think he's called Savin.
I think so.
Like
Yeah, he definitely had a name. I remember that was really interesting.
Yeah.
And then when you go through again, if you're online, I think it finds another player and their pawn.
Mm-hmm.
So that was really interesting. I think I fought Doug one time and his stupid pawn.
Nice. What I did, I knew about that, so I intentionally went offline for that, so I could just fight myself. Because if you go into New Game Plus and fight the Seneschal and you're offline, you just fight yourself from the first time. It's really cool because it saves like your character and your pawn's appearance and like armor and weapons from that point. So that's kind of fun. It's just, you know, the cycle going on. So I don't know what the story of Dragon's Dogma Online is, but it looks like completely unrelated. So would Dragon's Dogma 2 be like more about the cycle, or should it just be more like, well, here's the world and stuff's happened, but the story isn't actually continuing the cycle, it's just a different story in the same world?
Well, it is Dragon's Dogma, so I think the story would be in some way about, you know, the cycle, you know, the Dragon's Dogma, but it could flesh out more about it. What was interesting about going through the game of Dragon's Dogma was when you found out, you know, the little nuances, the little secrets, like what happens when, you know, you choose to walk away from the dragon and let your loved one be killed, and what that did to the Duke. You know, you kind of find this out as you go. And, you know, that's really interesting. So I'm sure they could think of more, you know, stuff to add into the Dragon's Dogma itself. More little, you know, interesting secrets to uncover for yourself as you go through it. And then, I don't know, maybe make more stuff for you to be able to do once you become the Seneschal. Because when you become the Seneschal, it's probably the most upsetting thing in the world. You can just walk around as an invisible person and kill people or bring them back to life. And that's all you can do. It's pretty funny. And then you just go back to your, you know, above world and kill yourself and your pawn screams, and then it's just kind of that for nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it is called Dragon's Dogma, but at the same time, the Dark Arisen stuff, it kind of showed what happens if you, because in Dark Arisen, Daimon, or whatever his name is, Daimon, he basically says, no, I'm not going to do this, because his whole situation was, his options were to sacrifice his pawn, who he had fallen in love with or something, or kill the dragon, who was another person that he'd been in love with, who had, like, he got saved by an Arisen, and then he joined up with that Arisen, and he fell in love with her. Then she turned into a dragon, which he didn't know about until he became an Arisen, and then fought that same dragon. So he was like, this is, like, really messed up, I'm not gonna do it, I'm just gonna curse the whole thing. I kinda liked that story, and I think they should kinda go in that route for the sequel, not make it so you are, like, you know, just doing the same thing from the first game, but look at it from a different approach, a different angle. And I'm sure the writers could come up with something like that. Hell, they could even make it so that you're not the Arisen. They could make it so an NPC is the Arisen, and you, like, have to help them, and your actions through the course of the game could influence what that Arisen does. Like, if you're like a bitch to them, maybe they change. Maybe they, like, want to sacrifice stuff, or become the Duke, or, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, you know, different cool stuff they could do with it. Of course, I'm not a very talented, creative person when it comes to stories, so I can't think of, like, where they can go. But I mean, they thought of that whole Dark Arisen concept. I'm sure they could add some more stuff, to that whole Dragon's Dogma paradigm of different things that could happen, in the Dogma, ways to, fuck with it or stuff like that, I guess. Just like the Dark Arisen did.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about, like, the multiplayer thing, why would you have, like, loads of Arisens all playing with each other? Maybe some Arisen or some mage or some bad guy has screwed up the Dragon's Dogma and made it so instead of one Arisen... Well, in fairness, in Dragon's Dogma 1 there was more than one Arisen, it's just that you were the active Arisen. Like, the Duke was another Arisen, and the Dragon Forged, he was another Arisen. But they weren't all active at the same time, so maybe something screws with the cycle. I mean, in fairness, at the end of the one, when you break the cycle, maybe leading into the sequel, that messes stuff up, and the cycle gets, like, screwed, and then you have, like, all the player Arisens existing at the same time for some reason. That could always...
Yeah.
That could be an option.
That does sound very interesting. I mean, that would tie into the whole making a multiplayer thing work. So...
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what it is in Dragon's Dogma Online. I'm assuming you are not all Arisens in that, but maybe you are. I mean, I don't know, maybe I should look into the story of Online and see what that is, but...
That's what I was thinking. I was like, that's true. I never really thought about the story of Dragon's Dogma Online.
Yeah. I guess the final topic then would be... Well, what I have written is modding, expansion, DLC. Like, what would you like to see for, like, DLC sort of content for any future game? I mean, what would you like to see for DLC for Dragon's Dogma 1, in fairness? Because that would, apply to the second game as well. Like, what sort of add-on content is good for the game? Because they had the main DLC, which was Bitter Black Isle. Well, that wasn't really a DLC, it was just an expansion, like, re-release of the game. And they had some, like, DLC armors, I think, and some, maybe some DLC quests, but I think they were mostly, like, just run around the world and pick up, like, collectibles and stuff, so...
Yeah.
What kind of stuff like that would you like to see?
I think, so, like, some of the DLC they did for Skyrim could apply here. Like, the vampire one was very interesting, where it created a new castle, that you could get to, so I guess it would, have to create something new that you would have to teleport to or, get to somehow through a loading screen, because it'd be hard to kind of already edit the existing world with, something new just in it, in the open world. But, if they could, take it in an interesting direction where it's not just, that new world or that new area, and also add some stuff to the story, add stuff to the main game, like Skyrim did with, now there are vampire attacks and all kinds of shit like that. Like, I talk a lot of shit about Skyrim, but I actually very much enjoyed it, and I thought their DLC was great. That vampire one, the other one that had the Morrowind area, the Dragonborn DLC and Dawnguard. Those two were, like, some, like, the best DLCs I've seen for games ever. I thought they were very interesting. They added a lot of new stuff, so... I guess stuff like that, they would have to create, new areas with loading screens in between. But, to be able to add stuff from there as well into the main game, I don't think it'd be that difficult. If they did add, like...
Yeah, I mean, I give Bethesda a lot of shit. Like, they still can't code ladders, which I find hilarious, but, I mean, they have done pretty good DLC, like, I had almost all of the Fallout 3 DLC, and what was the third one? Broken Steel, I think it was called. I really liked Broken Steel because, it added new areas, it added new weapons, and it gave you a new ending for the game. It made the ending not retarded, like...
It let you actually continue.
Yeah, it's like, oh hey, look, you're this dude who gets healed by radiation, but you won't go in there and do that for me? You literally want me to kill myself? That's really rude, I'm glad the DLC is going to make you do that instead. But, you were saying about it, like, affecting the main game, like, for example, it doesn't do this, but Bitter Black Isle, if like enemies from Bitter Black Isle showed up in the main game and stuff, like that kind of thing you're saying?
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Like the DLC having an impact on the open world.
Yeah, maybe if they showed up, at night, or like maybe, maybe storms would show up, like, bitter black storms or whatever, and from those, the new monsters from there, the more terrifying ones will show up in there. Something weird like that, because there's already magic in the world, so that's not something that'd be too crazy. Bitter black storms, that'd be very interesting, actually, to deal with those new monsters and stuff. They could be like, fucking events that you have to deal with at some point, where you could get something really cool out of them, even.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of back in World of Warcraft when Naxxramas launched, which was the final raid of Vanilla WoW. Did I say WoW? I meant WoW. I don't remember what I said, but they had I don't remember if it was Naxxramas, but they had like an event where the undead would just show up in all the major cities, and you would have to like fight them out and stuff.
Yeah.
What you were saying kind of reminded me of that a little bit. I think
that does sound pretty cool.
Judging from
something that affects like the hub areas.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways you can do that, and if they do story-based DLC, which I think everyone kind of likes story-based DLC, that's like the most popular kind, I think.
Yeah.
But that would be good. But judging from what we've seen in other Capcom games, they seem to like adding things like versus mode and stuff. So one sort of possibility for Dragon's Dogma would be a DLC where you play as monsters. Like, I don't know, they could make like Dragon's Dogma DLC where you play as the dragon, and like kind of like what's that mode called in Halo where one player becomes like super powerful and the rest have to all pump them silly?
Oh, Juggernaut?
Is it Juggernaut? I was thinking Juggernaut, but I thought I might just be confusing it with actual Juggernaut guy. You could also
for the Juggernaut video, you could also be thinking about what was it, Horde mode in Gears of War, where you could become, the monsters and stuff like that.
Oh, Beast mode, yeah.
But I mean, also imagine, I think that was Beast mode. But also imagine like being able to do that, grand boss fight against Grigori at the end, but Grigori is controlled by a player. It'd be difficult, like, it'd be hard to code how to control the dragon, but I'm sure it'd be very interesting. It'd be very much like is a weird comparison, but that reminds me very much of the new Mario Party, where you could do 4 people versus Bowser, and Bowser's just one person who gets a huge advantage because you're going against 4 people.
Yeah, stuff like that could be pretty fun. Like Resident Evil 6 had a mode where you can it was really inspired by Dark Souls. It was like you're meant to invade players' games whilst they're playing the campaign and play as the zombies, but most of the time it kind of really highlights how ridiculously overpowered the Resident Evil characters are, because you're playing as these zombies and they just completely beat the shit out of you, and it's like I'm meant to be the like terrifying monster, but this human, like fucking Leon with his foppish hair, and he's just kicking the shit out of you. It's like great.
Imagine invading.
Even better if you invade someone playing Jake.
I was thinking, imagine invading like something like that similar in Dragon's Dogma, where you invade as a chimera. That'd be funny.
That's what a DLC could add, like monster invasion, like just play as a chimera and like try and jump on some random player who's walking around the world. It'd be great. See, that I kind of like that kind of DLC. It can be really gimmicky and lose its appeal after like 5 minutes.
Well, I think it's something that could keep the game alive for longer. Because that's pretty fun.
Yeah. There is Left 4 Dead, where Left 4 Dead has a huge versus sort of community, and man, Left 4 Dead versus is it can get pretty intense at times, especially the first game because it was really well balanced. Actually, no, it wasn't. The first game had some huge issues. Like I remember it being mostly balanced, but the problem is if all the survivors group up in a corner in the first game, you are out of luck, my son. There is nothing you can do. Like, yeah, you can try and hit them with a boomer, but that's about it. It's like you hit them with a boomer, but they're still in the corner. It just means they're in the corner and now there's more zombies hitting them. They kind of addressed that in Left 4 Dead 2, where they put in the spitter, who like makes you move. But Other than that, Left 4 Dead 2 had some like horrible balance. Like the Charger was pretty broken because he could just get insta kills depending on the map. But yeah, that's Left 4 Dead 2, which has nothing to do with Dragon's Dogma, unless Dragon's Dogma 2 has like zombies in it. There were actually undead in Dragon's Dogma.
Yeah, they were weak to
that.
holy. They're very interesting.
And fire.
Creatures. Oh yeah, of course, and fire. They didn't really do much. They were just your simple zombies that lumbered and... Well, there were some that when you hit them, they would explode, but I mean, otherwise it's just your typical zombie fool.
In Dark Souls, like, Divine is only good against, like, skeletons, isn't it? Whereas, I think, like, the undead are weak to fire, and then the gods are weak to dark. That's usually how it goes, isn't
they're
it?
weak to occult. So, like, Gwendolyn and, you know, bosses like that were much weaker to occult damage.
Yeah. Occult damage is basically dark damage anyway.
Yeah.
Although that does... I'm going to check it right now. I'm going to see what the occult ember is called in the Japanese version. I'm going to look this up live as we go. And it's probably going to take me a while because I don't read Japanese, so I have to try and look through the Japanese wiki and find where the embers are. But, yeah, any sort of closing thoughts on Dragon's Dogma 2, stuff you'd like to see in it?
Well, so what we've talked about is a lot of ways to keep the game alive and interesting for a very long time, but would first have to get a pretty good budget and then a pretty huge player base to get all that. So, back in, it was January, the producer of Dragon's Dogma said, you know, according to how, you know, sales go for the upcoming PC port, you know, we might see, you know, if Dragon's Dogma 2 will be a thing. And I don't think there's been any word on it, even though the PC port, what I've heard, has done extremely well. So, I guess I don't know. It seems like Capcom at this point is just not... They're like Konami. There's just no more fun stuff anymore. Just ruining everything. So...
well, they're not on the level of Konami yet. They've, well, Capcom's been going up and down a lot the last few years. They don't seem to know what they're doing, but... Well...
I mean, so if it would be a huge risk if they did something like this with Dragon's Dogma 2 and, you know, put all that into it. You know, it could be something to really bring Capcom back to, you know, being a much bigger, more interesting, you know, developer, all that. It'd be a huge risk, and that's the reason why I feel like none of this will happen. It was really cool to talk about because it's cool to imagine. You know, this would be such a great game. You know, I think I would play it a ton. I think a ton of people would play it a ton.
Yeah. Like,
so
Dark Souls 1 is like a really great game for comparison, but I didn't really play Dark Souls 1 and go, wow, I want a sequel for this game, because I didn't really feel like there was that much that needed to be improved upon in Dark Souls 1. Dragon's Dogma, on the other hand, I really want a sequel because the game has so much potential, and a sequel could achieve that.
Yeah.
I mean, surely that's what a sequel is for. Not just to give us more of the same, but to give us what was lacking at first. And I found the Occult Ember, I'm pretty sure. I think it's called the Kurai Tanabe, which Google translates into the Dark Seed Fire. So...
That sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Dark Seed Fire.
Yeah, like they seem to be all called like something Seed Fires or something. Like this one's dark, and let me check what the other ones are called real quick.
That's what they call embers or seed fires.
Yeah, like there's the large Seed Fire, very large Seed Fire, Pilot Light of Priesthood, which I assume is the Divine Ember.
Wait, did you say Pilot Light of Priesthood?
Yeah, Pilot Light of Priesthood. That's just what Google translates it from, but mostly I was interested if they used like the occult thing. Yeah, then Seeds of Fire Large Priesthood.
Seeds of Fire Large.
Interesting. Yeah, that's for like sacred weapon. Did they have like divine, like large divine weapons?
Yeah, they had a large divine number.
Oh yeah, that must be that then. Large priesthood. That just makes me think of the fat deacons in Dark Souls 3.
Large priesthood.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty upsetting. Well, yeah. So, but about I'm pretty, I guess pessimistic about all this stuff happening. But I was hoping it's only because I was hoping to hear more about Dragon's Dogma, after the PC port, because I thought it did really great. I mean, Total Biscuit, liked it. The cynical Brit. So there's a lot of people that love it. It's apparently a great port. So it's like, why not? It would just be a moneymaker, I think. The original game did well in Japan, so there's no reason not to follow up. So that's the only reason I'm so pessimistic, because I want to hear something. They've said nothing about it ever since. It's been so long.
So here are my thoughts on that. We had the port a couple of months ago, and everyone seemed to like it. Then there's also this Deep Down game that they announced ages ago, which is a kind of similar looking game, like it's like knights and medieval fantasy stuff, but we've not heard anything about Deep Down for ages, so...
I remember everyone was talking about they were hoping it was a Dragon's Dogma 2, that Deep Down was.
Deep Down, honestly, when I looked at the gameplay of it, I didn't really like it, so what I'm hoping they've done is they've cancelled Deep Down as it was, and retooled it, and worked that team into Dragon's Dogma 2. But, so the director of Dragon's Dogma is also the director of Devil May Cry 3 and 4, and what I think they're probably doing is they're working on Devil May Cry 5, and after they work on Devil May Cry 5, maybe we're gonna get Dragon's Dogma 2.
Yeah.
Because the director hasn't done anything since Dragon's Dogma, which was 2012. What has he been working on for the last 3 or 4 years? I mean, he must have been working on something, because he's a pretty big name in Capcom, and everything he touches in the last 10 plus years turned to gold. Yeah, people sometimes blame him for Devil May Cry 2, but you can't do that because he came on Devil May Cry 2 halfway through development. Devil May Cry 2 is basically Dark Souls 2. They started it off and it turned into a spaz, and then they brought in a different director to try and salvage it. Which is what happened in Dark Souls 2. A lot of people blame Tanimura for Dark Souls 2. It's not his fault, it's the original director, I'm pretty sure, because look at Scholar of the First Sin, that was all Tanimura. Tanimura was the co-director of Dark Souls 3, and
There's
so
something I wanted to say.
We can't really blame him for Devil May Cry 2.
Something I wanted to say, actually, this is kind of an aside, but I noticed now there's a lot of people talking about a Dark Souls 1 remaster for PS4 and how much they would love that. I'm seeing all these petitions people are starting on the internet, like change.org and shit like that. And I was just thinking, I don't remember anyone wanting Scholar of the First Sin. No one was ever asking for Dark Souls 2 remastered on the PS4. It just kind of happened, and then when it was announced, people were like, oh, that's cool. But I feel like people have been asking for Dark Souls 1, remastered on the PS4 for quite a while. I wonder why they, would do Scholar instead.
There's a lot of rumors around that. There's people who say, oh, Miyazaki thinks Bloodborne and Dark Souls 1 are perfect and he doesn't need to touch them. But it's you say that, but where's the source on that,
Yeah,
I mean, it's entirely possible he does think they're perfect in his eyes as a designer and he doesn't need to change anything, but he might also think that, well, what's the point in releasing the game again if all I'm going to do is make it run better? Maybe he only wants to re-release it if he's going to add stuff to it or whatever, but you never know. Personally, I would love to have Dark Souls 1 on PS4, even if it's the exact same game, because that means I would have the entire franchise on my PS4, which would be useful, just for the sake of recording, because at the moment my only options for recording are on 360, which kind of has garbage frame rate, or on PC, which is garbage in other ways.
Yeah.
So I would like the option.
Yeah, I hear you on that. But so you're thinking there's going to be a new Devil May Cry, then after that, we're getting Dragon's Dogma 2.
I mean...
That's thinking.
they're doing something with Devil May Cry. I mean, the voice actor of Virgil, he is the worst guy in the world at keeping secrets. Like, they were doing like a interview Q&A thing at like a convention a few months back, and he's like, oh yeah, so we're like recording new stuff. Oh, am I allowed to say that? And Dante's voice actor's like, no, you're not allowed to say that. And he's like, oh well, I guess I've just said it anyway. And it's like they're definitely working on Devil May Cry stuff, but then we also had the really disappointing news that it might just be some sort of garbage, what was it, pachinko? Some sort of like stupid pinball game, or I don't know what it is, but it's something in Japan that I'm sure it's like fun or whatever, but you know, it's garbage. I don't want that shit. Give me a Devil May Cry game, don't give me Devil May Cry pinball or whatever the hell it is. I don't know.
Did I hear something about them doing
I'm happy in my ignorance.
A remake for Snake Eater, but a pachinko machine remake?
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're doing like this. It has like amazing like visuals and stuff, but like, oh, it's not actually a high definition remake. It's just some pachinko thing. Like, what is pachinko? I'm gonna look it up right now because in my mind I just think of it as pinball, but oh, it is. It's a Japanese form of pinball. Like, really? You're gonna make like these like amazing character models for the most beloved Metal Gear Solid game? Well, I don't know. Maybe it's one.
You're gonna do that to Snake Eater?
Yeah, people love Snake Eater. It's like, it's my favorite Metal Gear Solid. A load of people love it. And then you want to see like the boss in high definition? No, here's pinballs. No, don't do that. And that's apparently what they might have been doing for Devil May Cry, but I don't know. Devil May Cry 5, I'm really hoping it happens. I'd rather have Dragon's Dogma 2 because, you know, I've got a bunch of Devil May Cry games and they're all good, apart from 2. So,
I think
I'd like Devil May Cry 5, but I'd rather have Dragon's Dogma 2 first.
I think they might just think Dragon's Dogma's a risk. Like, they know that Devil May Cry will do well no matter what, and they might just, you know, just feel like that's what Dragon's Dogma is, just a huge risk to them. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing. It was a risk when they were making Dragon's Dogma because it was a new IP. It was being released in a very competitive market. Like, it came out less than a year after Skyrim. Like, I think something like 6 months after Skyrim, maybe less than that. And Skyrim was massive. 20 million copies sold or something like that. Remaster on the way. But Dragon's Dogma, I mean, 1 million copies in Japan, which is really good. Then, I don't know how many copies they sold otherwise, but Dragon's Dogma's...
And then a PC port 3 years later, like, I don't know where they got the idea for that, but they did it. So, and it
I'm
did
thinking,
super well.
Like, what they did with the PC port is, well, let's get the possibility of a sequel on the table, but before we do that, let's put a bit of money into re-releasing it on PC. Just, you know, see how it goes, see what the reception is like, see if the demand is there, and the demand, I reckon, is definitely there. So,
yeah.
I mean, to close this video, I reckon Devil May Cry 5, sure, give me that. I like Devil May Cry 5. Well, I like Devil May Cry a lot, apart from 2 and the one we don't talk about. So, give me that. And then Dragon's Dogma 2 on PC, the Scorpio and the PS4, 1080p, maybe 60 frames per second. I could manage with 30, I guess. It's not a huge deal to me. But give me online. That's what I want. And give me a spear class.
Yeah, we want that online. We want that co-op. We want to have, you know, all 4 of us climbing a giant dragon at once.
I just want this to happen. I want to be walking through the open world with David and, like, I don't know, maybe talking about something. And then suddenly Doug says, like, I'm bringing the Doug-rosity to you. Then we look and, like, over the horizon comes a dragon with Doug just, like, hanging onto it, punching it in the face. That's what I want to happen.
Yeah. And they could have, what was that one dragon, the Dragon, that had different weak points?
Yeah.
You know, they could make bigger creatures with more weak points and we all have to jump on it.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty crazy.
It's like, the synergy is there in Dragon's Dogma. The party synergy is amazing. So, having that with players...
There's a lot of...
make it even better.
Yeah. There's a lot of moves, like the warrior I believe has a move where you can, have someone jump off the flat of the blade, to launch them into the air to grab a flying target. Stuff like that. There's a lot of synergistic moves that you do with the pawns.
You can chain cast magic. You can have like a party of 4 sorcerers all casting magic at the same time, like linking it together. And you can have the throwing people off your sword or your shield if you're a fighter. There's like the taunting. The only problem I think would be the healing, but that might just be me because personally I hated the healing. I didn't mind having a mage do it, but I hated playing it. So if I was going to play a healer, they would have to change that up a lot, and I don't know.
Yeah.
They could make it like the Karazim in Heroes of the Storm, who's a monk from Diablo 3. He's a support class in Heroes of the Storm, but his trait is so at level 1 you choose that you make it as you attack enemies, you either heal your friends with your by punching enemies, or you make them I don't actually remember what the other trait is, because I always chose the healing one, because I think the other one's like damage buff or speed or something, but something like that. So basically like a monk who punches enemies, and as he punches the enemies he gains transcendence. Like he says, I'm being enlightened by this punching, it's making me closer to my god, and I'm healing people. It's great.
I mean, I'm sure they could find a way where if you're gonna, be with 4 players, and so one of them's gonna have to be a healer, they could find ways to just make it more interesting and more fun to be a healer class. Because the healer, the mage, can also do like fireballs and shit like that. So it's not like they can only heal. It's just the healing itself is kind of like, dumb.
You just make a sphere, then people walk into it. And it's not terrible, it's just it didn't appeal to me. But even if you just re-released Dragon's Dogma and put online into it as the exact same game, that would still be amazing. So
I'd love
the potential for building it in from the start and building the game around it, it's I mean, that's why we've made like an hour and 20-minute video about it, because it would be the best thing ever, pretty much.
I've been recording for an hour 20. See, there's so much to say because there's so much that we want from it, just because the first one was great, but the first one felt like a tease just because there was, so much I feel like they could have done that they just had to take out, I guess.
Yeah. Well, Dragon's Dogma 2, you heard it here, Capcom. Send this to every single person in Capcom, make them watch this whole video, and then make Dragon's Dogma 2. It'll be great. It'll be the best.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll listen to us too.
Of course.
Capcom, 2 guys made a video about it that's like an hour and 20 minutes long. If you guys don't do it, then what's wrong with you?
You're garbage, Capcom. Just do it. Just do it right now. Don't make this shitty Resident Evil 7 thing. No one wants that. I just fucking walk around my house with the lights off if I want that. Give me Dragon's Dogma 2. Don't welcome me to the family and punch me in the face when I open doors. Just give me Dragon's Dogma 2. I hate you, Capcom.
I don't know if saying you're garbage and I hate you will make them do it. Unless they need that tough love. They might need that tough love.
Yeah, then maybe they just need the tough love. But, well, thank you so much for watching or listening, whatever, to this video. If you somehow made it this far, my name has been Alex. I am the Silver Mont.
I have been David. Or DymonX.
The DymonX.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Doug is Doug.
In the video game world.
But he's probably still asleep.
He's with us in spirit.
Yeah. Alright, catch you guys later. Thanks for watching / listening / whatever. Ciao.
Bye-bye.